here I am driving my bike on a South African road, which is incredibly bumpy. Thank you, ANC. And even through my helmet and sort of picked up by the mic previously, you would pick up all the noise or a really horrible vibration somewhere on the left-hand side of the bike. Yes, this road is rough. It actually just knocked my wind out. Oh my word. Anyway, all right, let me try again.
So it took me a while to work out where the noise was coming on the left-hand side of the engine. I did check the heat shields and the exhaust pipes. I checked the belt guards and they were all fine. The rubbers were fine. I replaced some of the rubbers. The chain on the left-hand side of the engine was torqued and that was fine. The adjuster for the chain was not loose. None of this was loose. It wasn't rattling. This was all fine. I did have an issue with the connecting rod for the gear selector, is they have pivots on both sides that can move in any direction. So this thing was swinging like this and it was hitting the side casing going around the left-hand corner. So I made a nylon cup washer and I locked it on this side, but the other side's still free to move. Only reason why they did this is to clear the left-hand side exhaust. And then the gear shift was also a little bit loose and I made new bearings for that. But I still had the noise coming from the left-hand side of the engine. And it definitely wasn't anything in the engine, because if the bike was just sitting idle and idling on the side, I never had that noise. So yeah, that prompted me to look somewhere else.
So before I give you the ultimate cause, there was a definite sort of mechanical clanking on the left-hand side of the bike, like I mentioned. And I fixed up all the things that I mentioned previously. And ultimately, the thing that was actually causing the problem was the front left-hand side brake. Now, the floating pins, there's 3 O-rings that sort of make those pins floating, and they just lifted off the metal. And at some point, someone had changed those 3 O-rings, and instead of putting the Imperial O-rings in, they put metric O-rings. So the O-rings should be the Imperial 13.95 by 2.6 millimeter thick O-rings. So that's ID and O-ring thickness. Where there's a very, very close metric O-ring that's a 14 mil ID and 2.5 thickness. Now, you would think that 0.1 won't make much of a difference, but the problem is it's 0.1 in radius. So what happens is you have this 0.2 on diameter, and the O-ring sort of opens up into the 2.6 millimeter slot, and then you lose all the spring in the O-ring. So every time you go over a bump, the pin slider slaps the casing of the brake, and that was actually making quite a big noise. So I picked it up by actual fluke, because I thought I had sorted out the problem, like I mentioned previously, and I sort of went from one thing to the other, and I was going down a relatively rough field, and I pulled in the clutch, and they were still making a noise. So I thought it was something in the primary casing, but then I pulled the brakes, and if you pull the brakes lightly, the noise went away, and that to me immediately made me have a look at the brakes. So when you pull the brakes, the casing was pushing to one side of the pins, and it wasn't slapping around anymore. And yeah, that's how I found out where to look. It's a bit embarrassing that it took me as long as it did, but ultimately I found the problem, and now this bike is beautiful. There's no rattles at all, so I can just enjoy the engine and enjoy the quiet ride, other than the engine, of course. Anyway, I hope someone gets something out of this video, and if you have a rattle in your bike, that's probably one of the things to look at. Thanks for watching, guys.